Thank you, Samira, for that really warm, awesome introduction. Hello, Brittney. Hello, Jaden. Hello, Whitney. And hello, Dr. Grace. I just wanted to say, first of all, that I am so honored to be here at this patient day and especially here amongst these panelists. I don't have to introduce myself because Samira did it for me. So yes, my brother Connor, he lives with NMO, actually officially MOG now, as things have evolved over the years from a scientific point of view and clinically. I also have a husband who lives with MS, so I'm not going to speak to that today, but just to emphasize the importance of caregiving and the multiple roles that we all play in navigating these serious chronic illnesses. And so I'd love for each of you to have the opportunity to introduce yourselves and talk about what caregiving looks like for you and those that you take care of while living with NMO and MOG.
Okay, I kind of wrote something just because I've never spoke publicly before. So don't mind me and my voice or if I start crying. I'm the mother of Jaden. She was 4 when we took her to the hospital, thinking she just had a simple virus, maybe needed some fluids. That's when our world kind of turned upside down. Her headaches were getting really worse. She was having awful hallucinations. She went from walking to the potty to need to be carried, to be put in diapers. She could no longer get out of bed. It took over 2 weeks and 2 hospitals, 3 lumbar punctures, 2 EEGs, multiple MRIs, and a slew of other procedures to finally get the diagnosis. After feeling so helpless in my life, she was eventually treated with a high dose of steroids. They were considering placing a feeding tube, but on the 4th day, she showed some improvements. She was released from the hospital, taking steroids at home, even though she was getting better. She was like a 1-year-old. Her motor skills were gone, leaving her not able to walk. She had slurred speech, and it was such an emotional time for us all. A few days after tapering off her steroids, Jaden woke up with headaches, vomiting, and she went blind. We went back to the hospital. They started her on oral steroids again. We got the results earlier, testing, telling us that she was MOG positive. Jaden was getting worse and worse, and the hospitals couldn't get IV access. The decision was made to get a PICC line through her groin, and she was placed on a ventilator. They were able to start her on IVIGs. MRI showed a lot more new brain lesions. Her sight returned. She was feeling better. After a few days, Jaden stayed in the hospital for another 2 weeks before getting sent home with a much longer steroid taper. That July, she had finished the steroid taper, and it started all over again. The headache, the fever, the vomiting returned, and she was acting way off. An MRI found new lesions on the brain. She got another round of IVIGs. Jaden started monthly IVIG infusions at our local hospital. Getting a midline IV each month was something we all dreaded. It was getting harder and harder for the nurses to get the IV. As soon as Jaden saw the hospital, she'd start hyperventilating. She was simply just traumatized. There were no doctors in our area familiar with MOG. We love our local neurologists at the Toledo Hospital. We knew we needed to find a specialist not only for Jaden's sake, but for our sanity. We were able to get in and see Dr. Banwell at the Children's Hospital, Philadelphia. We had a new course of action. Jaden wanted to have a port placed to spare her the trauma of monthly pokes for her IVIG infusions. So in April of 2022, Jaden had her port placed, and although we were extremely worried, that was the biggest game changer yet. She had her first infusion at the hospital using the port, and it was like night and day. No screaming, no holding her down, no crying, other than shedding tears of joy. We eventually got her a home nurse that came to her house so she could receive her infusions at home where she was most comfortable. It's been an exhausting, emotional, and overwhelming last 3 years, to say the least, but most importantly, I wanted to share Jaden is thriving. And these tears are tears of joy that she regained her abilities that she lost. And as a mother, I know that she can never just be a regular kid after this, but she got her port removed yesterday. Sorry. Thank you. She got a report moved yesterday. She can now start to feel like a normal kid, as she says. But as I watch her do everything, I just thank God, because I'm so thankful she's able to be active in sports, and she's able to be doing well in school. But I also have so much anger. You know, my 7-year-old was so confused as to why she couldn't do things she once was able to do. You know, her motor skills were gone. The day I saw her on the ventilator, I've never felt so helpless. I felt anger and in the same intensity that I felt of relief, and these tears are mixed of emotions. I lost myself, you know, for a while. I had to move back home. Being a single mom, I couldn't, you know, keep a full-time job. Sorry. I couldn't keep a full-time job, and I had to get myself into therapy. I was really depressed. I couldn't unsee the things I saw in the hospital. I can still hear her screaming, "Help me, Mommy, do something." This has been a horrific journey for reasons that there's just isn't enough words to explain or to even make it make sense. But right now, I'm just thankful that she's back to her sassy, feisty self, doing all the things that any 7-year-old little girl loves to do. She hasn't had a relapse since July of 2021.
Whoa.
We stopped her treatments in December of 2023. And to all you parents that are early in this journey, our MOG babies, no matter the age, are stronger than we give them credit for. Stay strong and positive, and make sure you take care of yourself. It's easy to fall into that funk or have the really bad depression like I did as a caregiver. But you are important in this journey, so please take care of yourself. And although it might feel like it at times, remember you're not alone.
Wow.
Did you want to say something? No?
We definitely have to pause and just say wow to both of your journeys, Brittney and Jade. Wow. I'm so incredibly honored to be sitting next to you both. I'm so glad to hear that you are, hey, you seem to be thriving. You are a warrior princess, and so is your mother. You guys are incredible. Thank you so much for your resilience and through all the love of clinicians and science and just your mother and your journey. Just wow. Just watching any of us who love those who are going through NMO-MOG, it's a harrowing, tumultuous, turbulent, dramatic, and tragic journey. I can't imagine watching it on your baby. So, wow, I'm glad that you guys are doing well, and thank you for sharing. Thank you.
No problem. Jaden did write something, but she's a little shy, so I'm just
Please share for her.
I'm just gonna read it for her. She says, "I got my port out yesterday. It might be hard for you guys to deal with the port, but Jesus wouldn't put you through anything that anyone cannot do. But go to the beginning when I was 4, I woke up blind, and then I had to get an IV, and then after that, I had a port for 2 years. I was getting infusions every month. I stopped my treatments in December, but I love everyone. I can now walk."
Thank you for writing that, Jaden. That was awesome. I do not envy you, Whitney, having to follow that. But I know you have your own incredible, specific journey and story to speak to. So on that awful transition, Whitney, please.
Well, before I even get started, I really think we should get connected and our girls should get connected. We have a different diagnosis, but my daughter was 7 when she went blind at school. So I felt a lot of what you said, and I'm sure she did too. And I think we could have a great time together. But I'm Whitney. I'm from Lexington, Kentucky, and my daughter is 10 and is diagnosed with NMO. And as far as being a caregiver, of course, I've always been her caregiver since she was born. But I'd say when the first day she went blind at school and came home, we realized that caregiving for her would be different than with our other children. Number one, we needed to get informed. We came across several doctors who didn't know anything about her diagnosis or had wrong information. We had just even medication suggestions that we realized that could do more damage with what she was diagnosed with. We have advocated for her. That's something that's huge as far as a caregiver. So as far as at school, she's learning Braille and cane skills just so that if she were to relapse and lose her vision again, that she would be prepared. And if she doesn't ever need that, then maybe she can help someone else. We've also, I think one of the biggest things is allowing her to find her voice and to stand up for herself and be an advocate. She will give presentations at school each year to her class to let them know her struggles and symptoms that she could have. And so not only do her teachers know to watch out for things, her classmates do too, and they will, they have become advocates for her as well. Let's see. I don't know. I think that's about it.
Thank you, Whitney. And Dr. Grace, we heard a bit about you before in our wellness panel, but could you speak to how in your professional capacity of caregiving to NMO-MOG patients? Just a bit.
Absolutely. So I'm definitely unequivocally the least important part of this panel today, but really a big piece of what I do is with each patient that I connect with, I also make efforts to connect with their family, their caregivers, their support system, to make sure that those support systems have support as well. Like I said, in terms of support earlier, it's so important to know that you're not alone. So by starting our caregiver support group that we run through Mellon, but is open to anyone living in Ohio who's in a caregiver role, it does not have to be specific to Mellon. It's caregivers from all over. That's the beginning of our effort to make sure that you have a place, a voice, people to connect to, and resources.
Thank you so much, Dr. Grace. So we obviously have a very diverse group of panelists here of people who are caregiving to those with NMO and MOG. The physical capacity, emotionally, making sure that they have the adequate connection to clinical care resources. Other ones, educational advocacy that you pointed out, Whitney. There's also financial, making sure that, right, you have the resources at home to provide, as well as like healthcare coverage. That's a huge one. Logistical, administrative, I think, whether it's your child who, right, can't fill out the paperwork, or someone that you love who's navigating a very scary disease or might, have a disability that prohibits them from filling out that paperwork. I know I've filled out a lot for my brother to make sure that he's still covered by healthcare insurance, helping with disability, all things like that that I think can also be forgotten about, that does, also take a toll. And Whitney, I think you brought up a good point about the advocacy angle, right? There's some symptoms that are really obvious. They're a person's walking with a cane because they have visual impairment, or some that are invisible, right? So have you guys found it, how do you navigate those symptoms that are more like observable by others that people might have more compassion for, and then others that are more invisible that people don't even know to have compassion for. Any tips or tricks there, or just experiences that you'd want to share?
We've had to, every year, we've written a letter to her teachers and actually anybody she comes to contact in her school building, just to let them know some of the things that she suffers with that are visible and also that aren't visible. And, you know, with them being younger, I know a lot of times you can't know what they're feeling. And a lot of times they have a hard time telling you. So sometimes she's given us some little, like she was saying one time that her feet felt dry, and she says her feet feel dry, and we couldn't figure out for the longest time what she was talking about. She wanted to put water on them, and it's important to take all those things to a doctor. And we've also found, talking to other parents, that, you know, you can kind of put things together, but the dry feet is more of like, is that neuropathy? And we realize, like, there's tools out there for almost everything. Like, I didn't know those things were there, but doing some Googling, and my dad helps with researching things because Google can be scary. But we've found these neat little fans you can put under your blankets to cool your feet at night. So it's, I don't know, just being a voice and making sure that people listen when they come to them and say there are little things that are bothering them, that it's not always going to be visible.
And then to the point that Sumaira brought up about wanting to make sure that you take care of yourself as a caregiver so that you are able to be your best self for the person that you love. Grace, obviously, you are one of those people who help support the supporters, so thank you. And you, Brittney, brought up the importance of therapy. I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I think that'd be my number one resource recommendation, is to find a good therapist stat. Caregiver groups that you brought up, online communities, patient advocacy groups like the Sumaira Foundation. What have been the best resources for you guys?
Facebook groups. When she first got diagnosed, you know, it was a lot of information, a lot of scary things that they were saying, and feeling alone, not because nobody around the area, you know, could understand, you know, what Jaden, my mom, was going through. So being able to be a part of the Facebook support groups, being able to reach out and connect and talk to other patients or caregivers definitely helped me throughout it all. And taking us back to what you said last time with her when she was 4, it was, she couldn't, you know, really explain anything that was going on with her. She would always say that her hands felt tingly. But now that she's 7, you know, she has more of a voice, and she's able to kind of be an advocate for herself, along with me and her nana next to her side. But yeah, the support groups definitely, therapy definitely helped me tremendously.
Thank you, Brittney. So kind of similarly, like advice that you would give either to someone just beginning this journey as a caregiver, or what you know now, what would you tell yourself then? Any piece of advice you would give to yourself or someone new to this journey? And if you guys want to think about it for a minute, I could share mine. I think like we would probably, you know, want to like dump a lot of our experiences and, you know, what we've found to be most helpful. But I think my biggest thing would be to remind yourself that don't should on yourself, right? Like, okay, if you could go back and say, oh, I would have done it this way, I should have done it that way. And also to avoid toxic positivity and live in the and, like, two opposing things can be true at the same time. So for example, NMO and MOG suck, and you're grateful for hope, and you're grateful for these great clinicians and treatments. That would be my little piece of advice.
Oh, man. You can go. I'm so busy.
I would. So our initial episode, I guess, was 3 years ago. And it took me about a year before I went to therapy. And then I want to say it's probably been a year that the therapist might have put me on medication, but I was miserable, like anxious all the time. Like, what's going to happen next? Is she going to get sick and relapse? Is something going to happen, during the night and I'm not going to know and she's going to be laying there? And so medication has helped me a lot. I used to be super, super emotional, and it has helped so much. So I wish I would have done that earlier, and taking time for myself. That's something too that I've just started doing over the last year. And I feel like I am a completely different person, just having time to decompress and do things that I enjoy instead of I used to be like a helicopter mom, and now my kids will tell you I'm like a drone, and it's pretty bad. I think it's just helped in all situations in our life, just me having time to myself and realizing it's important to take care of me.
And then, Dr. Grace, from a professional capacity, what do you tell your new patients or patients or your caregivers, I should say, who are just beginning their own respective journeys?
I always tell them that it's important to have a care team that you feel like you can really connect with. And I even say that about myself. If you don't feel like you're connecting with me, too, let me know. There's more than me on the team, right? I want to make sure that you have a space that you feel like you can really talk in, and that you're working with people that meet your needs. And an example that comes to mind for me is working with a patient who was newly diagnosed with NMO, and she was kind of in this transition point where she was experiencing some mood symptoms, away at college, didn't know how to, talk to her care team and her caregivers, I should say, and her family about this. So we had a group visit, and we said, how can we all share together and get on the same page? And that was really, really impactful for this patient, and particularly her mom, just to really understand, and having that third person in the room just to kind of help validate was really, really empowering for her. So make sure you're comfortable with your team. Ask questions. There's no silly questions like we've talked about. And just meeting them where they're at is what's most important for me. So if you can find a provider that meets you where you're at and is receptive to your needs, I think that's makes a big difference.
Thank you so much. Totally agree. I wanted to open up any opportunity for questions, any of the panelists, maybe from other caregivers or someone new, just any questions at all. We can connect afterwards, but I just wanted to say thank you again to, oh.
It's not a question, but I'm Whitney. I'm sitting next to your beautiful daughter, Addison, who is very emotional about this. So maybe you want to say something to your mom?
I'm just so thankful that I have her and that she could take care of me. Oh.
So sweet.
And on that note, what a great way to close it. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, guys. Please give these panelists a round of applause.